Well, welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Your Blank What Now podcast. My name's Marcy Nettles, and I am your host. And I absolutely love being able to bring you a different story each week from a different guest that has had something in their life that was just a challenge for them, that it was an opportunity for them to either choose, because it's all about the choice, to either break down in the moment or break through. And today's guest is no different. And by the way, I am going to be calling her by her first name. And when she comes on, she can share her last name with us because it's one I know I would slaughter it and I don't want to do that. But Gintare is my guest today, and I am so excited to introduce her to you. She has always loved a challenge. She was actually raised in Lithuania, eating real food. So when she moved to London and the scale started climbing, she started to notice that much of the food in the grocery stores came in boxes and cans or vacuum sealed with labels reading fat-free, low-fat, reduced sugar, and so much more. I'm sure everybody that's listening to this can relate to that, right? This began her journey to becoming a certified ketogenic nutrition coach. She interviewed many ketogenic and plant-based food experts in her search to become as knowledgeable as she could in her quest to find real food. After becoming a nutritionist and coach, she was diagnosed with her worst fear. Even with all the challenges of her life, she realized that her health had to come first, and food is the root of health. She knew that having a healthier relationship with food was not just about losing weight, it's also about optimizing your general well-being. So I am so blessed and honored to be able to welcome you to the show, Gintare. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
Thank you. Well, we just met like just weeks ago when you reached out from LinkedIn and we got connected and I started hearing your story. And I just thought that it was a really good time to share more about nutrition, more about food, because never before have we been a fatter people. Never before have people not known what to do. And so I've got several different people that I have interviewed and that I will be interviewing on this topic because it's that important. And so we decided that your episode title is going to be You're Diagnosed with Your Worst Fear. What now? And now, audience, what now, tribe? You're going to notice that I'm going to be kind of playing around with that your factor. So some episodes it will be YOU apostrophe RE, and this episode is YOUR. So pay attention to that, and you'll see some differences coming up here in future episodes. So Gintare, can you please share with the What Now tribe more about who you are, what your childhood was like, and how your mother's sickness really kind of affected your growing up years?
So, as you mentioned, I am ketogenic wellness nutrition coach, and I work with women who's struggling to lose weight. All my life, since my childhood, I was very interested in nutrition. And growing up in Lithuania, back in the day, all my parents provided to all the meals for me was the most natural food what you can get basically, and we wasn't aware of it. We didn't know, it didn't existed back in the day like that much of processed food what we have today. And few years ago, good few years, when I moved to London and I changed obviously my diet, I started to gain weight, and I didn't realize why was that to begin with. And then obviously I started digging deeper into that, and as back then nobody was talking about nutrition as openly as they are today. So it was quite a journey, quite difficult to figure out what it was. And then it took me some time, and I realized there's food quality, that it was much poorer in UK than was back in Lithuania. And obviously my nutrition passion even like kicked in even more. And this is where I decided to become a nutritionist. And unfortunately, few years ago.
Well, and before you get into your diagnosis, let's go into your childhood a little bit.
Yeah.
Let's talk about what life was like for you. You know, you already talked about food and how important that was for your parents, and what they provided to you was so natural and so good for you and full of nutrition,
Yeah.
right? But when you were a child, can you tell me some about your mom? What was her activities like? What was she like as a mother? Because a lot of this nightmare we're going to be talking about, or this worst fear,
Yeah.
stems around your mom, right?
Yes. So when I was growing up, obviously my mother and her other two girlfriends, my mom was super active person, and they decided to open a business as three girlfriends. And it was a ice cream sort of, they were making ice cream sort of like a kiosk, was at the time super popular, and they kind of branched it out, and they were very like passionate about it. They were very driven, and they were working all the time. There was obviously, you know, when you start a new business, it requires all of your attention, you know, all of your most of your time. So it was kind of, it was a family business. Everybody was involved in there, and you know, every on a daily basis, you know. And there was, you know, there were, I remember my mom used to bring, you know, change from work, and then you have to bank it. And I remember how I actually learned how to count by counting money, coins, literally. That's the way I was very little, because then that's kind of my memories. And was a few years into their business when my mom's health started kind of, she started to feel some sort of symptoms that she wasn't feeling right. And when she was going through the doctors, like nobody noticed what was wrong with her, like they couldn't kind of pin it down. And it took them for about, they missed sort of her illness for about 2 years. And then after a couple of years, they found out that she's got hypothyroidism. She was diagnosed with hypothyroidism, but in her case, it was kind of caught very late. They were missed for 2 years.
Oh, wow.
And they couldn't get like right medication for her, just to kind of to get her life back. There was always, you know, loads of medication involved, loads of tablets. There was like, you know, increasing doses, decreasing doses. It's all like a roller coaster for her, to the point that she had to do the, you know, surgery to remove the thyroid, some of it. And that didn't go sort of, the results wasn't there what was expected. And from then on, her just health gradually went down a hill, and it reached the point that she wasn't able to work anymore. She wasn't able physically to run her business. And eventually she had to come to make decision that she needed to sell her part.
Hmm.
And obviously the all of the girls, like other her girlfriends, um made decision that they decided to sell that business, all of them, because there was a lot of work involved and a lot of, you know, active work.
Yes,
It's not
absolutely.
like, yeah, it's not like you're sitting down at home in front of your desk. It was a physical, and she wasn't capable to do that anymore. She was constantly in the hospitals. um she was all the time sick. She wasn't that type of person where anymore, where wakes up in the morning and she's full of energy and she runs around, does things, going there and there, and it's hard to keep up with her. It was completely all of a sudden, and it felt like it's overnight happened, completely another person. She was in the hospitals. When she's not in the hospital, she wasn't like feeling well at home, and she drifted into depression. And it started to affect all of us, because once the person is in, you know, depressed, and especially if it's on the medication, it's no longer, you know, just for that person. that that person has been diagnosed that's disease and depression and all that. And but it's also that diagnosis affects people who are around her and affected, because I was a kid, I was in my early teens.
Yeah. How old were you when she first started becoming ill? And then obviously it was a couple years after that that she was diagnosed, right?
So she started to become ill. I was about like 9, 10 years old. And when she was diagnosed, she had a surgery. I was 12 years old, something like that. She was when she had a surgery.
Okay.
And it was just she became completely different person.
And
And
how old are your sisters?
I'm the only child.
Okay, okay. I was thinking the two ladies that were in business with her. I'm sorry about that. So what did this mean to you as being this daughter that had first been so involved in the business, learned to count, counting change, and what was life like after your mom got sick? When
It
she
was
couldn't.
very scary. It was very scary. It was especially when she hit depression. That was extremely worrying times, and it lasted for years. It lasted for years. Many nights I cried myself to sleep. The scarcity, I learned, I always said, like, it goes, how did you kind of power through that? And my secret was I learned how to live in scarcity, in the worry, how to, when you're scared, how to live in the scared times. Because
What
there
did
was,
that feel like, though? What did that feel like as a young girl? You were such a young girl.
oh yes, it was. That's why I think I grew up very fast. I needed to grow up very fast. And it's funny how it is, like, when you realize that the problems you're facing today, you having a problem today, tomorrow it ain't gonna be any better. It's gonna be same problem drifted into tomorrow. And it's kind of, there is no way out of that problem. It's not like, you pay the money and the problem disappears. This is, we're talking about health issues, is a long term. And there was a many days when I was coming from school, I was scared to go home because I didn't know when I'm gonna open the door, what I'm gonna find. Because depression hit very hard. And it was at the same, from one point, um people who are in the struggling with depression, I could say, I could use a word, and I know it's going to be maybe insensitive to other people, but they kind of are selfish, because they in the moment they think about themselves, but they don't think how it's going to affect other people.
Well, that's kind of all they can focus on. You know
Yes.
what I mean? They really can't think outside of themselves. And so, yeah, I understand how it can appear to be selfish, especially to a young girl, a
Yeah.
child that sees
Yeah.
her mom, in this position. But when you're thinking about the person that has the struggle with the mental problem or the depression, sometimes they can't see outside of that.
You
And
don't.
so they're kind of stuck in this wall or in this room by themselves. But as a small child, you don't understand that. And
No,
so
you don't.
absolutely.
Exactly, because you think, like, I get it, like, you depressed and you have an illness, and but there is me again, like, I'm here and I'm still growing. I need kind of guidance. You are my parent. Yeah. And so it's kind of, in these kind of situations, you almost kind of, you become a parent to a parent in a very, very early stage.
Right.
And you end up learning how to deal with different situations, different circumstances with it, and you kind of, on fast learning track, kind of, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, most definitely. Well, you're faced with real life situations that a child is normally protected from. You're having to make sure that you're safe and that your mom's safe. Was your father in the picture?
Yes.
Okay. And was he working full time outside the home?
He was working full time. It wasn't like working from home, but at the time, as my mom faced her struggles, my dad slowly kind of drifted into the alcoholism.
Mm. Which is common.
Yes. And but me being as a child, I ended up dealing with both parents, like kind of looking after basically the circumstances, because I know if my it will, whatever decisions my dad's gonna make, it will upset my mom, and I'm trying to avoid from this to happen.
Right.
So I'm trying to, maneuver situations in the family
As a 12-year-old.
as a 12-year-old.
Right. So I can't even imagine what you went through with that. And as a 12-year-old, that is really such a formative time in your life.
Yeah.
You're changing in your body, right? Because you're maturing and all of the cycles and everything are changing. And so there's emotions based in there that you're not quite sure how to control, not to mention going into, womanhood basically as a young girl and not having your mother present to be able to help you.
Yeah.
That it makes it very, very difficult for you. And that's also the time period that you start to making decisions about who you're going to be and who you're not going to be.
Yeah. And because obviously growing up, most of my life, my mother was sick. So I always had that vision, and I always had in my head that disease, basically, that diagnosis, what it did to her. And for me, it was the biggest nightmare. It was my nightmare. I didn't know anyone like with the cancer or something like, other diseases. All I knew, my mom had hypothyroidism, and I saw how it changed her. She become completely different person for what I knew it before when I was a kid, toddler. And for me, that diagnosis, that disease was, the worst nightmare.
Oh
It was
gosh.
my biggest fear.
Yeah. Yeah. So how did this time period in your life and living with a mom that had this illness, obviously she didn't ask for it. It was something that came upon her. How did this help you make your decision to move into your life passion, of becoming a nutritionist and a coach?
So because I was always like, my parents obviously like fed all of the, not just me, but the whole family. We always eating what quite healthy. It's not like about being healthy, but this is what existed back then. We didn't have like, microwave dinners or pre-cooked meals. None of that existed. And that's all we knew. And I moved from Lithuania to London, I obviously discovered different cuisines, and and I'm a foodie person. I like to try something new, and I was experimenting all of that. And I remember going to supermarket and seeing all of this food packed and so many things, and I'm like, how do you cook this food? And I found desserts that is basically tin packed, which was absolutely shock for me. I didn't know that you could even do that to a dessert, like in a tin packed desserts. And it's like with like sugar syrup in full of it, and I was like, oh wow, obviously I want to try it because I'd never seen it before. And before I knew it, the pounds would just start piling up on me, and as I didn't know what's happening, what was the reason, and it was piling pretty fast, and nobody was talking about nutrition. Nothing, like nutrition didn't exist back then, which was like a few decades ago. I'm talking about it, not even that. I kind of started more looking into it, like eating what I was eating before, because nobody was talking about diets or what to do and how to lose the weight. It's like sort of everything was very hush hush. And I started obviously picking, like, the foods that what I was trying to get back on the food, what I was eating back before. And I realized that a lot of the foods is just so processed. And it was like there was no nutrition value in there, like basically zero. And for me, it was a big eye opener. And obviously, I kind of started sort of not preaching, but kind of my point of view and my friends and like what you eat and oh, this is no good. This is just full of, sugar, full of this. And I used to drive them crazy. And because like they didn't know, because obviously once you're in UK, they knew what they were always having, and there was me coming in, and it's like, well, this is I don't have in Lithuania. This I don't have. This is a process. This is just like not real. And it's like, what do you mean it's not real ham? It's like, look, this is a process. This is not how the ham comes. There's no flavor. It doesn't even taste like a ham anymore. And obviously, kind of, I drifted deeper and deeper into it. And this is where I decided to because I realized, like, I never seen so much obese people in my life. What I saw noticed in UK.
You should come to America.
Well, actually, just a couple of weeks ago was UK announced the most obese people in Europe, the fattest kind of country in Europe.
Wow.
So I realized, because for me it was shocking. Obviously, different cultures, different cuisines, and I never seen so much overweight people. And obviously, like, I start, preaching even more. And I used to go, and I still do. I go to supermarkets, and when I see like obese person, I straight away look at the trolley, what they purchased, what they piling up, and I'm kind of start to give them dirty look, like, what are you eating? Why are you doing this to yourself? And this is because kind of like, especially as we going like further and further with the technologies and everything, and with such a processed food, the processed food affects our well-being, our health, without a doubt, in a big time. And this is where it's kind of me growing up with my mom, most of my life, seeing her being ill. For me, the health is number one, and I will embrace it in any possible way I can, whether it's going to be holistic, whether it's going to be, from my exercising, or if I could help with some, supplement, I will embrace it, because without your health, you have nothing.
Yes.
You have literally nothing. All my life, when I was little, I remember my friends' mothers. When I was a kid, the only thing I was jealous that my friends' mothers were able to go to work, was able to work. My mother wasn't. She didn't have that energy. She didn't have health to work. And for me, it always stuck in my mind, that vision, that picture. So I will do whatever it takes to be healthy. I will make sacrifices that just to be healthy. It's not like, some people, like, if you put them like, on a diet, it's like, oh, I can't live without this item. I cannot live without that. Yes, you can. Yes, you really can.
You certainly can. It might be a sacrifice in the beginning, because I truly believe it's a plan designed, right? I think it is a plan to get us addicted to food that's not good for us. We become obese. We have to go to the doctors more often. We have to have more pills given to us. It feeds the system by us being, obese or even just slightly overweight, because we're not making the right choices. And so if you don't want to get sick, and if you don't want to be overweight, and if you want to feel good, you got to look at your food. You have to.
You start from somewhere, and you start from what you put on your plate.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I agree 100%. So even after you became a nutritionist and you were coaching, um, you received, or you started feeling ill yourself. Can you share more about what happened and what it led to in a diagnosis?
So after I became nutritionist, I worked with females, obviously losing weight, helping them out. And I start to notice that I started to gain weight. And obviously it was just recently, it was well, recently, a few years ago, beginning of the lockdown, very beginning. And I thought as a lockdown, we
That
just have
COVID-19 that people talk about.
exactly right. It was just, one too many basically, maybe alcohol, maybe, food, comfort food is still a winter kind of, And then I started to obviously with spring coming in and I started to exercise and I could see that I cannot shift those few extra pounds. And my exercise were quite intense. I was always fit person. And I knew at that point there was something wrong with me. That is the reason why I cannot shift my weight. And obviously, like thyroid was on my list, but was very at the bottom of my list. I was thinking maybe I have some like imbalanced hormones, or maybe it's just diet a little bit out of control. And whereas I found my doctor and I asked to send me for a blood test, and I wanted to do the whole blood test, my vitamin levels, everything to see maybe something what is misbalanced. And my results came back that I have my mother's disease. I have hypothyroidism. And
How did you feel initially? What was that like?
well, my biggest nightmare just came true.
Mm.
What I was most afraid of, it just became a reality. And considering it was a while ago when my mom obviously was diagnosed with that disease, and technology and the science move forward like quite a lot, but in my mind it was still stuck in that age, in that time when my mom had it, and how badly affected her, and how doctors couldn't to get it right.
Yeah, well, you probably reverted right back to your 12-year-old self,
Yeah,
to
oh,
where those emotions that you had back then, the thought process you had back then, all probably flashed right back to you.
it did. It certainly did. And it was the biggest nightmare. I didn't want it to go. It just turned my world upside down in that minute. And there was a lot of thoughts going through my mind. I didn't know what to do. I felt a little bit lost and obviously overwhelmed. I didn't want to believe at the same time. I thought it was just like maybe sort of misdiagnosed, or maybe I could reverse it. Like, that you can't, but, I maybe could do it. Like, because it's a lot of thoughts going through your mind. And I decided to not to go on medication straight away, as doctors doesn't provide you with much information, just giving you diagnosis and the medication, and that's it. And I tried to kind of, obviously I dived in more into the research, what I can do, how, what is like sort of options these days for these kind of, diagnosis. And eventually I sort of had to come, bite a bullet that and that I have to go on medication, and that I don't have a choice. And because otherwise because the way when I knew that something's wrong with me, and I caught it in a very, very early stage. So I was lucky from that perspective that I caught it very early, like, because I knew it.
Well, you also knew your body. You were very
That
aware
I'm
of your
aware
body.
yes, I'm very aware of my body. And I always say to my clients, always listen to your body, because your body tells you if there's something's wrong. You just need to listen to it. And because most of the signs I like, side effects I did not have, and my doctor didn't expect that either. And he said that, you caught it very early and you're one of the luckiest people. And so I didn't kind of wanted to like extend the time, like I'm not taking a medication, so I decided to go on a medication. But just because you go on a medication, a pill is not the answer to everything.
No.
You still have to make a changes, you know well, you have to change your life basically from the basis.
So tell me then, Gentara, what choices did you make after that initial shock kind of subsided? What
Yeah.
choices did you make to take back that control in your life, so that you weren't just being, given this diagnosis and that's who you became? What did you do to prevent breakdown in choosing to break through in this diagnosis?
So I'm very strong person because obviously of my experience. And I kind of decided to kind of bite a bullet and not to kind of, obviously, because I knew it how it affected my mom and how kind of she lost it control over herself. So all the time having that vision in my mind, it kind of pushed me forward to, not to break it down. It kept me stronger. So I obviously decided to go on a pill. I had like consultations with my family. I had the consultations with the doctors and sort of and endocrinologists as well for second opinions and all that. And I decided to go on a medication at the time with the idea that might be able to come off eventually. And I did tried it. It did not really happen, and I cannot come off of the medication. But obviously, I considering being nutritionist, I was still gaining weight, so I needed to make a tweaks in my diet to even become more healthier than I was already, even to more sort of make a changes and tweaks, with my diet, because now this has become my lifestyle.
Yes.
This is my forever.
Yes. Well, and
And
that's the thing about our bodies too, is we're all unique, right? Each one of
exactly.
our bodies needs to be treated differently. And
Yeah.
so you looking at yourself now, you had to make that decision to use that medication, but not to only rely on it,
No,
and to give your body everything else that it could be. And I love that you did the trial and error. It's like you changed things here and there, to work for you.
exactly. I also, I decided to go try different like supplements. I went on a holistic like remedies to try that, embraced that as well. Obviously, fitness became a the big part of my life. It always had been, but this at that point, I even embraced it more. I started more often exercise and do different type of exercises. I always like to run. I was a runner, and I wasn't so much of a gym girl, but I became a gym girl. And I also became I always liked swimming, so my gym kind of has a swimming pool, so it's like, two birds, one stone.
Yes.
So I do it like I run, I exercise in the gym, I swim, I try to eat my healthy foods. I have even a vegetable garden in my back garden. I grow my own vegetables. And yeah, it's just doing everything I can to support my health.
Because that's how important it is, right? That's how
Yeah,
important it is. Do whatever it takes.
whatever it takes. Because you have only one body. You cannot change it. You cannot wake up in the morning and say, well, let's change to something else today, to someone else like body. And if you wake up in the morning and you don't feel well, you know, it's bad. It affects your mental health. And now when I decided to help a women with the weight loss for women who suffers with hypothyroidism as well, was kind of a massive reminder to me, because I kind of dealt with my condition and I dealt pretty well, but it's just who I am. And I completely kind of forgot. Then I got big reminder when I start working with other women with the hypothyroidism and how they've been affected by that.
Yes.
How is their mental health affected? And when people think it's just a weight gain, oh, you're just gaining weight, and it's not just gaining weight. It's out of your control. It's your side. It's a side effect, and it's a simple thing as a weight gain drift people in a mental like health. They having the problems with in the nervous breakdown. It it's a lot. When you see it, it's just you for some people who never been in a situation like this, they cannot even I cannot even say that they understand. They cannot even imagine unless you're in the situation. But it's a simple thing for some people. Maybe it looks it's just a weight gain, but it's got enormous effect on mental health.
Yes. Yes. I truly believe that we are given opportunities to go through difficult things, to be able to learn and grow, and then to be able to turn around and then use the wisdom that we have gotten from the experience to help other people shorten their learning curve. We should be, looking for ways to be able to help people walk through difficulties that we've already been through. Right. I mean, that's why I started this podcast. That's why I know God said this is what it needs to be, because we're here to help each other. And so, is that really what drove your passion and helping women with
Yeah,
specifically
exactly.
hypothyroidism?
Because it's extremely like for us females to lose a weight, it's already hard as it is, whether you have underlying health condition or not.
I agree 100%.
But having a hypothyroidism, whereas yours as a side effect is weight gain. And for some women, it seems like they gaining weight just by looking at the food. And some women gaining weight by hours, because they feel like that. So can you imagine how is that going to affect their mental health?
Oh, yeah. Their confidence, their belief in themselves. I mean,
It's out of the
everything,
window. It's
100%, everything on how they show up is going to be a deficit compared to
and
what they could be.
exactly right. And especially like today, people are cruel. And I always think, because obviously because of my mom, because my mom gained a lot of weight, and a lot of people thought that she was pregnant, but she wasn't. She just gained weight in her around her stomach. And this is how especially in the winter when you're wearing like a coat and all that. I remember when we were queuing up, and one woman, she was sitting on a bench, and she stood up and she said for my mom to sit down because she thought my mom was pregnant, and she's queuing up like standing on her feet. And when we came back home, my mom burst into tears because someone thought that she's pregnant when you aren't. So how that, how can you feel? How do you feel? Like what to think? You know, what you're gonna do? You're not gonna go in the street and start screaming. I have underlying health condition and it's kind of out of my control. You know, and especially these days, I always when I see like overweight person, I kind of sort of think whether it is because of just a poor decisions when it comes to food, or something more to it, or something like underlying health condition that is, that makes them to be overweight. And before we kind of start judging someone, we kind of need to sort of look in deeper to it.
Yeah, I agree 100%. A lot of the times, because we've become such a convenient society, fast food is everywhere, and fast food
Exactly.
is convenient and it's quick and it's easy and it doesn't cost a lot. Well, all of those things are clues that it's not real food and it's not what your body needs, right?
Oh,
So
absolutely, absolutely.
I do agree with you that we do need to take a step back, though, before we start judging people, and that we need to have more compassion and care for each other, because a lot of the time it is because someone is ignorant, and not using the word ignorant in a negative fashion, but they just don't know what they
No,
don't know,
exactly.
right?
And especially like when it comes to schools, because this condition, are children yet. There is no age limit sort of when from where you start. And I had a client, she was a 14-year-old girl, and she was diagnosed when she was 8.
Wow.
And when you are over, she gained like 30 kilograms in 4 months.
Wow.
And so when your body's, especially like 14, when it's your hormones, start kind of as well working and developing and all that, well, teenager basically, and you've got underlying health condition to deal with, that as a child you have no idea what is this, what do I have, and how to deal with that. And then at the same time you've got friends, and they kind of looking at you gaining weight so fast that they kind of cruel. They can be very cruel to you.
Yeah. So for those of you that are listening here in the United States, that 40 kilograms is going to be about over 18 pounds,
Yeah.
over 18 pounds for
Oh yeah.
this young girl to gain.
It's more than that.
It's crazy.
It's yes. It's enormous. It's enormous. It's enormous amount, and in a very short time as well.
Yeah. So her confidence being in school and having to deal with that. I have a question for you because now we were just talking about a young girl. What is one thing that if you could go back and talk to yourself and tell yourself, either when your mom first started not feeling well or when she was diagnosed, what would you say to your young Gintara?
Oh wow. Well, I live today by saying, basically my motto is, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. I live by that, and it's a fact. But it's hard to make sort of changes, what to suggest. As I always say, even my friends go, like, if you had the whole world's money, would you relive that decade when you were from 10 till you're 20? That decade, would you relive again, choose to live with the knowledge, that with knowing that you're gonna have the whole world's money? And my answer would be no. I would not choose to relive that decade, because it's extremely hard. It's who I am today.
Yeah. And I would actually challenge that because without that decade, you wouldn't be who you are now.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And the thing is, considering, like, the tough times made me strong, but at the same time I wouldn't want to relive those times, because they
Yeah.
were really tough.
Yeah. So would you just tell yourself, your young self, it's like, be strong. You're going to learn a lot of powerful lessons in the next 10 years, 15 years, however long it was. You're going to come out of this and you're going to be powerful, and you're going to be able to help so many other women because you're going to go through what you're going to go through. I
Uh,
just think it's so important for us to think about that, because those of us that have had challenges as children, childhood trauma, we need to recognize it and we need to look at it with a different perspective of gratitude,
oh
know,
yes,
that we went through it.
absolutely. It's
Yes.
absolutely, as I always say, like, no matter how bad situation can get, you need to kind of find something positive in there, or something fun in there, even through the tears,
Yeah.
because otherwise it will crush you.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
and we cannot let this to happen, basically.
No, no, we can't, because we can do hard things.
Yeah.
We're strong people, and we can make choices that can actually take us into joy from chaos. So
Yeah.
it's completely in our hands. That's the good news. It's in our hands, the decisions we
It's in
make.
our hands, but you need to kind of be more aware of it, because a lot of people, obviously, when the challenges come in our way, it sometimes is very hard to think straight, like to have that clear vision, and clear mind, because we all individuals and we all deal with challenges a different way. And some people lose it, some people drift into depression, some people feel completely lost, some people feel like extremely overwhelmed, and sometimes it's very hard to have that sanity, to keep it there together. It's
Yeah,
easier said than done.
absolutely. To keep the total focus, the full vision instead of the tunnel vision around the
Yeah,
problem. Yeah,
you know.
yeah, that is so good. That is so good. So what are you doing now to help spread awareness and to, bring solutions and help people in your world?
At the moment, my focus is purely women, actually. Well, I help other women who needs help. Of course, I'm never going to say no, but my heart goes out with women who suffer with hypothyroidism. And it's just generally, it's not just about the weight loss, but it's just about general support and mental support, and any support, whatever, how can I support from my experience, I'm happy to do that, because there's a lot of information is missing. It's a lot of information that hasn't been provided, and this is where it's kind of a little bit sort of in a niche that it needs to be filled in.
Yeah,
How
I
to get
agree.
support.
Okay, so call to action for the What Now tribe. This is going to be an episode that you absolutely want to share with anybody that you know, love, care about, and maybe even somebody that you're just meeting that has an issue with hypothyroidism. It's a mouthful. Um,
It is.
and share this episode because this just might be a solution that they've been praying for, and at least a step in the right direction to getting the knowledge and understanding and awareness that Gintara was talking
Absolutely.
about. Yeah.
Awareness, yes, for sure. Because it was, I actually, sorry, just for the interrupting you. There was a stats that I was looking into it, and apparently, like 30% of USA people have a thyroid issues, and it's about 60% that is been undiagnosed, just misleading, that not been noticed, which is phenomenal numbers.
It
Phenomenal.
is. And that means that whole 60% of the 30% are struggling, not knowing what's going on,
Yeah, and some of
battling
them,
themselves.
maybe they don't have any symptoms. Like I didn't have any kind of symptoms, but I knew it was something wrong. And just because it's not symptoms not showing enough, like fully, they're not paying attention to it, and it just not being recognized and diagnosed.
And they're feeling lost, discouraged, depressed,
Absolutely.
frustrated. Where if you just share this episode, it just might be, a starting point for them to be able to get on the right track of getting information. I mean,
Yeah.
obviously, this episode's not going to solve a problem, but it
No,
is going to open up the door.
absolutely.
Yeah, I love it. Well, Gintara, how can the What Now tribe follow you, connect with you? Where can they find you?
Well, I have a website, and it's www.ketogenic-wellness.com. And if someone wants to reach out to me, they could do by email, which is hello@ketogenic-wellness.com.
Awesome. I'll make sure that that gets into the show notes so that everybody can get connected with you. But Gintara, I just adore you. And I am so grateful that we have been connected and that we are now, because I'm on that same journey myself, totally fresh eating, good food, and being focused on my health, because that is the most important thing. Doesn't
Absolutely.
matter how much wealth you have if you don't have your health. Because if you don't have your health, you'll spend all your wealth trying to get your health back.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for being my guest today. I have thoroughly enjoyed this conversation, and I know that there will be many people listening that will be blessed. So thank you so much for being my guest.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
You're very welcome. Where is my recording at?